ventilation controllers versus thermostats. So in this video we'll go over what the difference is between a thermostat and a ventilation controller and what you should know about it. So we'll talk about thermostats first. The good thing about them is, keep the cows in while we're talking. They're simple. You just have a knob, you have your breaker box, and you have your motor. All you do is run power from the breaker box through here and to the motor. As long as it's a small enough a motor, you're in good shape. When you turn it, you can hear it click, because that's right when it turns on. You just set 70 degrees, and it'll just, every time it's above 70 degrees, it'll just run, and it's easy to wire. Now, there's a couple wires in here where there's a heating and a cooling. Basically, if you want to use it as a heater or a cooling. But the one thing you got to remember, it only breaks one of the two wires going to the motor. So all motors have at least two hot wires going to them, and you want to break, and you should actually disconnect both of them, but this will just disconnect one, which will stop the motor. So that's one disadvantage. The real serious advantage with these is they're simple to hook up. They're inexpensive. This might be 70 bucks or so. Maybe you can find some on Amazon for less, but the quality of them goes down as you get to the cheaper ones. So these are really good for simple stuff. One drawback is the difference between on and off. So you want it to turn on at 70, where it turns off is going to vary because they have some kind of gas inside here, and it pushes on a switch. So the difference between on and off varies. So you don't know exactly how many degrees it will be. With a ventilation controller, you key in, this goes with a touch screen or your phone, you key in the exact temperature when you want it to start. And you set the threshold of how much it must cool down till it turns off. So you can key in like a 1 degree between on and off, and that'll save you a bunch of money in greenhouse. Here we're in with dairy cows. What it will do, it'll make the control a lot tighter. And if you have like multiple fans, they'll stay synchronized much better with the ventilation controller. The big difference with the ventilation controller is they allow you to keep a lot of fans all running off the same probe, but they each have different starting temperatures. So you can stage them, and the stages will make sense. They won't start or stop early based on how the thermostat is feeling. So you can stage things very nicely with this. One of the disadvantages with an environmental controller compared to the thermostat is it's a little bit more complex. You have to wire into here, and the small relays in here are not heavy enough to switch the motor current. With the thermostat, these generally are good up to at least about a half horsepower. However, if you're doing a big motor, you still will need a contactor. Big motors, even if you can't run too big of a motor with this, you have to use something like this. This is a definite purpose contactor. When it turns on, it's a clunk. It actually, these big fat wires hook up here that go out to your motor, and this actually switches the current. So it's a little bit more complicated to connect with an environmental controller or a ventilation controller and contactors compared to a thermostat, but it is way easier to keep stuff staged better. You can be more efficient with your ventilation because you can set the exact starting and stopping and bring in a whole host of other things, remote access and staging, perfect staging. So that is a difference. To recap the differences between the thermostat and the environmental controller: thermostat is inexpensive, easy to wire, but it varies with the temperature, and you can't adjust it real tight. The ventilation controller allows you to stage many fans very accurately and do a good job. It does cost more, but it generally makes up for it in the long run with a more efficient setup.